VERSTAPPEN.com Racing allowed Max Verstappen to express his passion for motorsport by creating a platform that brings multiple forms of motorsport together. Most famously, Max Verstappen raced under this name for his time racing GT3 cars between the F1 weekends. But could the team make the jump to Formula 1 with Max at the forefront? Using their ties to Red Bull, the new team will enter the sport using Red Bull Junior Nikola Solov alongside the current P2 in the F2 Championship Gabriele Mini before I simulated the next 10 seasons of the sport. Now before we begin, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The 2026 season would shape up to be a fairly competitive one, with 5 different race winners, as Charles Leclerc would take 6 race wins for Ferrari, while his teammate Lewis Hamilton also found success. Both McLaren drivers would win races, with George Russell being the only successful Mercedes driver. This allowed Ferrari to come out on top of the Constructors' Championship with 497 points, beating McLaren by 76, while Mercedes finished in third just ahead of Red Bull Racing. Now Verstappen Racing's debut season wasn't exactly the greatest as they finished down in P7, scoring just 8 points, with Gabriele Mini finishing in P12, while Nikola Solov finished P15 with a single point. The Drivers' Championship saw Lewis Hamilton return to the top 3 with Ferrari, finished just behind the former champion of Lando Norris, who failed to retain his title this season. Instead, a new champion was crowned, after Ferrari's Golden Boy finally achieved his first world title, taking 6 race wins along the way, and finishing just 19 points ahead of Lando Norris, who took 4 race wins himself. 4th place Russell won 3 races, while Hamilton won twice and Piastri just once. A fairly large transfer market would follow the opening season, as Lando Norris becomes a free agent, while Carlos Sainz moves from Williams to McLaren. Nico Hülkenberg then moves to Williams, with Victor Martin joining Audi, while Lewis Hamilton decides to retire after the first year. Oliver Bergman will unsurprisingly replace him at Ferrari, while Isaac Hadjar leaves Red Bull in favour of Haas. Pierre Gasly then returns to the Red Bull team, with Kimi Antonelli joining Alpine, with Esteban Ocon moving back to Mercedes. Max Verstappen will then retire from the sport, becoming the team principal of Verstappen.com Racing, while Fernando Alonso makes the move to fill his Red Bull seat. Pepe Marti will then fill the open seat at Haas, while Sebastian Montoya will also come in for his debut at Aston Martin next year. Another 5 race winners this season, with Charles Leclerc taking the first win in Australia, while George Russell and Oscar Piastri continued their success. A couple surprise winners came in the form of newest Williams driver Nico Hülkenberg, while Isaac Hadjar took his Haas to victory after an absolutely insane race in Austria. Ferrari were able to retain their Constructors' Championship, although Mercedes would close the gap considerably, finishing just 63 points behind, with McLaren dropping to 3rd and Red Bull remaining in 4th place. Verstappen Racing would make a small improvement, and although they dropped to P9, they did manage to score 23 points. Oliver Bearman had an incredible debut season with Ferrari, as he managed to secure a 3rd place finish, just behind the former champ Charles Leclerc, who dropped to just 7 points behind the world champion. Now this season saw another new champion being crowned, as George Russell took his first world title, winning 5 races across the season, despite the reigning champion of Leclerc managing to win 8. This meant that Oscar Piastri and the newest race winners all took a single race each. There would be a much smaller transfer market this season, with Sebastian Montoya becoming a free agent after just a single season, and Nikola Solov takes his seat at Aston Martin. A new race winner Isaac Hadjar will then make the move over to Verstappen Racing, while Kimi Antonelli leaves Alpine in favour of Haas. And the final seat is then at Alpine, with Lewis Hamilton coming out of retirement to continue racing with the French team. Once again 5 race winners this season, with Leclerc continuing to start the season strong, while George Russell took the illustrious race win in Monaco. Piastri won again in Qatar, with Esteban Ocon taking his first race wins with Mercedes, while Gabriele Mini secured Verstappen.com's first success after winning twice. And it was a massive season for Verstappen Racing, as they jumped all the way up to P4 in the Constructors' Championship, scoring 206 points. Mercedes, however, would take the title after scoring 444, beating Ferrari and McLaren, while Red Bull dropped down to 5th after being overtaken by Verstappen. In the Drivers' Championship, Oscar Piastri managed to move up to 3rd place, just behind last season's champion of George Russell, who failed to retain his title. The Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc would then return to the very top of the standings to win his 2nd World Championship, just 13 points and 2 race wins ahead of George Russell. Now there will be some major changes at the end of this season, as Gabriele Mini leaves Verstappen Racing and becomes a free agent. Gabriel Bortoleto will then fill that seat, while Sami Megatunov debuts with Audi next year. Fernando Alonso will eventually retire from Formula 1, with another GOAT, Lewis Hamilton, moving from Alpine to Red Bull. Nico Hülkenberg will also leave the sport, possibly also retiring, as Sergio Perez moves from Cadillac to Williams, and the final seats are filled by Jack Crawford at Alpine, while Tim Tramnitz comes in to drive for Cadillac. For the 4th season in a row, 5 race winners were crowned. However, it would be George Russell who took the first race win in Australia. Charles Leclerc would still win races including his home race in Monaco, while both McLaren drivers took victory and Esteban Ocon rounded out the season winning in Abu Dhabi. Mercedes would go on to retain their Constructors' Championship, finishing ahead of Ferrari and McLaren, while the Verstappen Racing team would remain in P4, scoring slightly less points this year. The top three of the drivers remained pretty similar, with Oscar Piastri once again finishing in 3rd place, while George Russell failed to return to championship glory. He finished just 10 points behind the champion of Charles Leclerc, who retained his title to become a 3-time world champion after taking 7 race wins this year. Some possibly massive changes will once again happen at the end of the season, as Lewis Hamilton will once again enter retirement, while Esteban Ocon leaves Mercedes for rivals of Red Bull. Gabriel Bortoleto will then join the Mercedes team, with George Russell making the opposite move and joining Verstappen Racing, allowing Lando Norris to return to Formula 1 with the Constructors' Champions of Mercedes. Sergio Perez will also be retiring, with Pepe Martin moving over to Williams, Richard Verschoor joining Haas, and Lance Stroll becomes a free agent. Tim Tramnitz will then make his move from Cadillac to Aston Martin, allowing another debut of Callum Voisin to make his debut while driving for the Cadillac team. Season 5 returned to having Leclerc find the fastest success, with both Mercedes drivers also securing race wins. Oscar Piastri took the jewel in the F1 calendar, while Isaac Hadjar found another race win while driving for Verstappen Racing. And for a 3rd season in a row, Mercedes secured the Constructors' Championship, finishing ahead of Ferrari and McLaren once again, while Verstappen Racing stayed in P4. The newest Mercedes driver also took his car up to 3rd place, overtaking Oscar Piastri, with Charles Leclerc falling down to the runner-up spot. The former champion George Russell fell down to P7, allowing the other Mercedes driver Lando Norris to return to the top of the standings and win just the 2nd world title of his career. Norris took 8 race wins across the entire season, with Leclerc winning 5, while just 1 race was won by Bortoleto, Piastri and Isaac Hadjar. And once again, the transfer market is pretty big. Gabriel Bortoleto becomes a free agent, while George Russell leaves Verstappen Racing in favour of return to Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli will then make a move away from Haas to join the Verstappen Racing, allowing for a debut of Joshua Dirksen in his place. Alex Albon will also become a free agent, being replaced by Liam Lawson, as Valtteri Bottas moves over to the Racing Bulls. After just a single season, Callum Voisin also becomes a free agent, with Sami Megatunov moving to Cadillac, Jack Crawford moving to Audi, and Nicholas Orlov moves from Aston Martin to Alpine. The open Alpine spot is then taken by Victor Martins, while debuts will be given to both John Bennett at Cadillac, while Kian Shields comes in for Audi. The regulation changes don't provide any more race winners, with once again just 5 drivers finding success. Leclerc once again took victory in race 1, with Russell taking the win in Monaco, while the reigning champion Norris, his former teammate of Oscar Piastri, and the newest Verstappen Racing driver Kimi Antonelli all managed to take race wins. Mercedes would go on to completely dominate the Constructors' Championship once again, finishing 130 points ahead of Ferrari. Verstappen Racing remained in P4, with Antonelli finishing in P5, which is the highest result in the team's history so far. George Russell returned to Mercedes and then returned to the top 3, finishing just 5 points behind Charles Leclerc, who stayed in the runner-up spot. But another 8 race wins allowed for Lando Norris to remain at the top of the championship and retaining his world title, with Leclerc only winning 4 times, while Piastri won twice, and Russell and Antonelli taking a single race win each. But there will be some very interesting changes at the end of this season, with Carlos Sainz leaving McLaren, being replaced by Kimi Antonelli, who leads the Verstappen Racing team. Pepe Marti, Arvid Lindblad and John Bennett all become free agents, with Esteban Ocon joining Williams, while Franco Colapinto moves to Red Bull. Richard Verschoor will then join Alpine, while Roman Stanek comes in at Haas. Verstappen's former teammate Alex Albon will become the newest Verstappen Racing driver, while Max Esterson joins the American team of Cadillac. The final open seat is then at the Racing Bulls, where none other than Lewis Hamilton will once again come out of retirement to join the Formula 1 grid. We do see a drop down to just 4 race winners this season, with George Russell and Charles Leclerc both taking 5 race wins, while both Lando Norris and Kimi Antonelli took 3 races each. Mercedes would continue their dominance at the top of the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari in 2nd and McLaren 3rd, while the Verstappen Racing team dropped to position 2 P5 after being overtaken by the Red Bull team. Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc would then drop to 3rd place this year, being overtaken by the Mercedes driver George Russell, but could still not compete with his teammate Lando Norris, who kept his position at the top of the standings to win another Drivers' Championship despite not winning the most races this year. He only took 3, while George Russell and Leclerc won 5, so he must have put in some good performances in the other races. This season is rounded out with some more major driver changes, with the reigning champion Lando Norris becoming a free agent. Oliver Bearmore will then move from Ferrari to Mercedes, with Pierre Gasly leaving Red Bull, while Isaac Hadjar takes his place. Former champion Charles Leclerc will then make the move to fill the open Verstappen Racing seat, being replaced at Ferrari by Kimi Antonelli, allowing Gabriel Bortoleto to join McLaren. Tim Tramnitz and Joshua Dirksen will also become free agents, with Alex Dunn joining Aston Martin and Freddie Rasmussen joins Haas. This season we actually see an increase in race winners, as 6 different drivers reached the top step. Oscar Piastri broke the Australia curse to win his home Grand Prix for the first time, with his teammate Bortoleto taking the win at Monaco. Both Mercedes drivers were able to win races, while Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli also stood on the top step. Mercedes were knocked off the top of the standings as they fell to 2nd place, just ahead of Ferrari but 11 points behind McLaren, who was able to take this season's Constructors' Championship. Now with Lando Norris out of the sport, Oscar Piastri managed to return to 3rd place, while George Russell once again missed out on the World Drivers' Championship. Another new world champion is set to be crowned, with the Italian driver Andrea Kimi Antonelli taking his Ferrari to the very top of the sport to win his inevitable first world title, and I must admit I thought this would come a lot sooner. Now he managed to take 6 race wins this season, with Russell 4, Piastri and Leclerc taking 2, while both Bortoleto and Behrman just won a single race each. And once again there are some pretty big changes. Pierre Gasly will retire from the sport, just like Lewis Hamilton, but hopefully the 3rd and final time, allowing Oliver Behrman to move from Mercedes back to Ferrari. Gabriel Bortoleto will then make the move to Mercedes, while Franco Colapinto joins McLaren. Oscar Piastri joins rivals of Red Bull, with Nicola Soler partnering Colapinto for an all-new McLaren lineup. Isaac Hadjar leaves for Alpine, with Alex Albon joining the Red Bull team, allowing Arvid Lindblad to return and join Verstappen Racing. The final open seat allows for Callum Voisin to return to the Racing Bulls after leaving the sport at the end of Season 5. We do drop back down to just 4 race winners this year, with the reigning champion continuing his success. Oscar Piastri took race victory in Monaco, Russell in Brazil, and Leclerc continued to win races with his Verstappen Racing team. But it would be Ferrari returning to the top of the Constructors' Championship, finishing just ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull, while the former champs of McLaren dropped down to P4, just ahead of Verstappen Racing. Now despite moving to Red Bull, Oscar Piastri remained in 3rd place, once again behind George Russell, with the top 3 actually remaining the same, as Kimi Antonelli pulled away to win a 2nd world title in a row. He improved to take 9 race wins this year, while Russell only took 4, Piastri managed twice, and Charles Leclerc was victorious on just a single occasion. Now heading into the final season, and the final transfer market does provide some major moves. Arvid Lindblad unfortunately once again becomes a free agent, with the reigning champion Kimi Antonelli moving from Ferrari to the Verstappen Racing team. Nicola Soler will then take his Ferrari seat, allowing Callum Voisin to move to McLaren. Jack Crawford will join the Racing Bulls, Richard Verschoor moves over to Audi, and Pepe Marti takes the open seat at Alpine. The final driver moves see George Russell making a return to Williams, replacing Liam Lawson, who will join the former champions of Mercedes. The final season would see 6 different race winners, with Kimi Antonelli continuing to win for Verstappen Racing. George Russell started the season strongest, winning in Australia, while both Mercedes drivers and Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri took race wins. And finally, after 9 seasons of trying, Verstappen Racing are Constructors' Champions. The team scored 440 points, 35 ahead of Mercedes, with Red Bull moving up to take 3rd place. Now upon returning to Williams, Russell did actually manage to stay inside the top 3, with a 3rd place finish being secured, but did finish over 80 points behind the runner-up of Gabriel Bortoleto. Now winning the championship by just a single championship point was Kimi Antonelli, who retained his world title despite joining the newest constructors of Verstappen Racing. Now it was incredibly close with just a single point separating them, after Antonelli took 6 race wins and Bortoleto won just 5. Piastri managed to win twice, while the single race win was secured by Russell, Leclerc and the new Mercedes driver Liam Lawson. And that does reach the end of the 10 seasons, so let's have a quick look at the decade as a whole and see what happened. Now Verstappen Racing obviously weren't the fastest team straight away, finishing P7 in their first season, before eventually becoming Constructors' Champions in the final year. Mercedes were the most successful team throughout the simulation, taking 5 Constructors' Championships, while Ferrari won 3 and McLaren winning just 1. The Drivers' Championship was a little bit more evenly spread, with Lando Norris winning just a single title, while Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli won 3 titles each. There are also 14 different race winners throughout the simulation, with first-time winners coming in the form of Oliver Behrman, Nico Hülkenberg, Liam Lawson, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriele Mini and Gabriel Bortoleto. But after winning 3 world titles, Charles Leclerc ended the simulation at the top end of the sport, winning 45 out of a total 160 races. And that's going to wrap up another F1 26 simulation, and a pretty successful end to the decade for the Verstappen.com racing team. And make sure you drop a like if you did enjoy the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There will be links in the description, including a link to the incredible mod that I've used for this video, but also a link to my Discord server, which is the best way to receive updates about uploads, but also just have a chat to different people with similar interests. But that is going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.